Why did modern agriculture completely abandon a plant and forget tree that automatically drops premium, high-energy chicken feed for 3 months straight with absolutely zero labor? This tree wasn't just forgotten. It was actively boycotted, burned, and legally banned from American cities because of an epic 19th century financial crash, and because an industrial food system realized it could never monetize a crop with a shelf life of 24 hours. Every small flock keeper knows the pain, the bagged feed vulnerability. For every dozen eggs, the ledger bleeds out. Nearly 70% of the cost of raising chickens is not in the birds, the coop, or the labor. It is in the feed. Pallets of corn and soy, ground and pelleted, trucked in from hundreds of miles away. Their price swings with every drought, trade war, or diesel spike. The numbers do not lie. In a year of tight margins, the feed bill alone decides whether a backyard flock is a source of food security or just another expense. Yet while the calculator blinks red, something astonishing happens out in the forgotten corners of old farms and fence lines. The 90-day drop, the self-filling feeder, quietly rewrites the math. A mature mulberry tree, left to its own wild devices, begins a slow-motion rain of fruit. Not a single day of labor is required. For 3 months, from the first warm days of May through the heat of July, the branches let go of their bounty. First a trickle of green berries, then a flood of ripening purples and reds, scattering across the grass like confetti. Every morning, a new layer. By the time the last fruit falls, summer is nearly spent. This is not a short window or a single flush. Mulberries stagger their drop, stretching the feed over a full quarter of the year. In some varieties, the harvest lasts up to 90 days, long enough to bridge the gap when commercial feed prices spike and pastures dry to straw. Chickens, those high-metabolism mini-raptors, flock to the base of the tree, hunting for fallen fruit, pecking at the sweet, energy-rich clusters, and chasing the insects drawn by the fermenting sugars. The daily scramble under the canopy is more than a snack. It is a full-blown feast that slashes the feed bill without a single scoop from the bag. Commodity markets do not care about timing, but chickens do. The mulberries' drop aligns with their hungriest season, peak laying, rapid growth, and the most daylight hours. When the cost of bagged feed bites hardest, the tree answers with a steady supply. There is no need for storage bins, no risk of spoilage in a sack, no price tags. The tree's calendar runs on sunlight and rain, not on futures contracts or global shipping lanes. The contrast could not be sharper. On one side, a system built on constant input, fragile to every shock, demanding payment for every pound. On the other, a perennial engine, planted once and left to work, dropping feed as if on a timer. For the backyard keeper, the promise is simple: resilience that cannot be bought, only grown. The mulberry does not just offer a break from the feed store, it offers a different way of thinking about abundance. As the summer stretches on, the ledger starts to look different. For every dollar not spent on feed, each egg becomes cheaper, each flock more independent. The 90-day drop is not a miracle. It is a forgotten pattern, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice that the solution was never in the bag, but in the branches overhead. A mulberry tree isn't just a fruit machine, it's a two-part superfeed. Beneath the summer canopy, the sugar burst comes first. Lab printouts from Brick's refractometers show mulberry fruit loaded with simple sugars, quick, high-octane carbs that hit like an energy drink for chickens. Each berry clocks in with a Brick's reading between 8 and 15, rivaling table grapes and blackberries. For a flock in peak lay, this means instant fuel. The birds hit the ground running, burning through calories to keep eggs coming and feathers glossy. But the mulberry's secret isn't just in the fruit. When the last berry falls, the tree keeps giving. That is where the protein leaf takes over. Dried mulberry leaves, run through a crude protein assay, test between 15 and 22% protein, comparable to alfalfa, the gold standard for livestock greens. In practical terms, that is enough protein to support muscle repair, feather regrowth, and the relentless demands of laying hens. The numbers are not just impressive on paper. In feeding trials, even a 10% inclusion of mulberry leaf meal in the ration matches or outperforms soy-based feeds. Broilers gain weight with less abdominal fat, and layers keep up production without the need for imported protein. This energy-protein handoff is what sets mulberries apart from most forage crops. The fruit delivers a sugar rush when metabolism peaks, while the leaves step in with slow-burn protein, stretching the feeding window from a fleeting treat to a season-long supplement. The tree's biology does the work of a feed mill, but without the fossil fuels, the transport, or the price swings. There is a bonus hidden in the leaves, too. Mulberry foliage is rich in xanthophylls and carotenoids, plant pigments that move straight into the yolk. In flocks with steady access to fresh leaves, eggs take on a deeper orange color, loaded with antioxidants. These compounds are not just for show. They fight oxidative stress in birds, boost immune function, and pass directly to the table, where consumers prize that golden yolk as a sign of true pasture nutrition. Lab printouts confirm what old-timers saw in practice. A mulberry's output is not just abundant, it is balanced. Quick sugar from the fruit, dense protein from the leaf, and bonus antioxidants in every bite. No single bagged feed can match that profile. For a backyard keeper, it means resilience that stacks, energy for today, protein for tomorrow, and a yolk that stands up in the pan. The mulberry's nutritional story is not a miracle, it is a quietly verified fact, hiding in the margins of the feed bill and the lab report. Crack open an egg from a flock raised under the mulberry canopy, and the difference jumps out before the first bite. Yolk color is not just a matter of aesthetics, it is a direct readout of what went into the bird. Under the microscope, lab technicians track the shift using colorimetry. Eggs from mulberry-fed hens register a deeper orange, almost sunset-rich, compared to the pale yellow of standard bagged feed layers. That pigment comes from the tree's own arsenal: xanthophylls, carotenoids, and anthocyanins, plant compounds that pass straight from leaf to yolk, stacking up as antioxidants and immune boosters. The result is not just a prettier plate. Studies show these pigments fight cellular stress in the bird and deliver measurable health benefits at the table. For small producers and backyard keepers, a golden yolk is more than a marketing point. It is proof of nutrition you can see. But not every mulberry delivers the same punch. The choice of species and variety is where the backyard advantage sharpens. Three main players dominate the map: Morus rubra, Morus alba, and Morus nigra. Each brings its own climate tolerance, fruit chemistry, and growth habit. In the northern stretch, zones 5 through 7, Morus rubra, the native red mulberry, stands out. Hardy through deep freezes, it shrugs off late spring frosts and keeps dropping fruit even when drought bites. Its berries run sweet but not cloying, and its leaves pack the full protein profile that puts it on par with alfalfa. For keepers in the Midwest or Northeast, rubra is the set-it-and-forget-it pick, requiring almost no care once established. Dropped south of the Mason-Dixon, and Morus nigra, the black mulberry, comes into its own. Nigra's fruit is legendary for its sugar content. Brix readings can top 15, rivaling the best table grapes. The flavor is richer, almost wine-like, and the anthocyanin load is off the charts, translating directly into those deep yolks and antioxidant boosts. Nigra cannot handle harsh winters, but in zones 7 through 10, it delivers a longer fruiting window and higher sugar yield per tree. For egg color and bird health, it is a heavyweight. Morus alba, the white mulberry, is the wild card. Brought in for silkworms, alba adapts to nearly any soil and grows like a weed. Its leaves are protein-rich, but the fruit is milder, with lower sugar and pigment content than rubra or nigra. Alba's main advantage is speed, fast to establish, fast to recover from coppicing, and able to push out tons of leaf mass for flocks needing a steady protein source. In regions with extreme heat or marginal soils, alba can fill gaps where other species struggle. But there is a catch. Decades of nursery breeding have flooded the market with fruitless male clones, trees engineered to drop zero berries, prized for shade but worthless as feed. That is the pitfall for anyone planting with feed in mind. A fruitless male may look robust, but it will not deliver a single berry for the flock. Only female or monoecious trees capable of both pollen and fruit turn sunlight into chicken calories. The difference is visible within a season. A fruitless male stands clean, while a productive female carpets the ground with berries every morning, drawing a parade of birds and insects. For the backyard keeper, species choice is not just about hardiness or speed. It is about yield, pounds of fruit per tree, protein per leaf, and pigment per egg. The climate map is simple: rubra for cold, nigra for sweet, alba for tough spots. But always choose a fruiting tree. The payoff is a flock that eats with the seasons, eggs that stand out in the pan, and a feed bill that shrinks without a single trip to the store. The biological argument is settled in the lab, but the action happens at planting time. One tree chosen well sets the table for years to come. A flock under the mulberry canopy does not just eat differently, it acts differently. The jungle fowl activation is more than a catchy phrase. It is a return to the bird's wild blueprint. Red jungle fowl, the ancestors of every backyard hen, carved out their lives in tangled forests, never far from the safety of leaves overhead. Even now, after thousands of years of domestication, those instincts run deep. Place a flock in open pasture, and every shadow overhead triggers a ripple of panic. Hawks and owls know it too. Predation records from open paddocks show the cost. Aerial attacks spike, especially in the exposed hours of midday. The difference under a mulberry is immediate. The broad, low branches throw a living shield, providing protection against the sky, breaking up silhouettes and confusing predators. Studies tracking free-range broilers in silvopasture systems reveal a drop in hawk and eagle strikes, sometimes by half, compared to flocks ranging in open fields. The birds themselves seem to know it. Instead of scattering at the first sign of movement, they settle into a rhythm. Heads down, scratching, pecking, dust bathing. Behavioral metrics tell the story. Under shade, chickens spend up to 90% of their active time foraging, matching the patterns of their jungle ancestors. Stress indicators like the heterophil to lymphocyte ratio, a blood marker for chronic anxiety, fall by 20 to 30% when birds have access to tree cover. The flock moves as a single relaxed unit with less feather pecking and fewer escape attempts. Even on the hottest days, the microclimate under a mulberry stays cooler and more humid, cutting heat stress and keeping the birds active longer. The canopy does more than block the sun. It creates a safe zone where natural behaviors can flourish. This is not just about comfort, it is about production. Lower stress means better feed conversion, steadier laying, and fewer losses to predators. Every branch overhead is working double duty, feeding the flock and guarding it. The result is a calmer, more productive group of birds, tuned to the rhythms of a habitat that feels like home. The jungle fowl activation is not nostalgia. It is biology in action, and it is measurable in every egg, every calm dust bath, and every morning when the flock steps out, unafraid. A mulberry tree doesn't just feed chickens from above, it rewires the entire food chain under its branches. When ripe berries hit the ground, the story doesn't end with the flock. Fermenting fruit draws a surge of beetles, sow bugs, and earthworms, all feasting on the sugar rush. In field trials, the insect population beneath a fruiting mulberry doubles during the drop, transforming the soil into a living buffet. Every morning, chickens dart between clumps of grass, snapping up beetles and larvae that were not there the week before. The tree multiplies its protein gift, turning sunlight into fruit, then fruit into insects, then insects into eggs. It is a feedback loop that no feed sack can match, a living system where every layer feeds the next. But the resilience of the mulberry goes deeper than its fruit. When drought turns pastures brittle and grass withers to straw, the mulberry shrugs off the heat. Its roots punch down through hardpan, tapping water and minerals that shallow-rooted crops cannot reach. Even after a summer of scorching sun, the leaves stay green and thick, ready to be stripped for feed or left to fall as mulch. In regions hammered by dry spells, the tree's ability to keep producing leaf mass is legendary. Researchers tracking coppiced mulberries, trees cut back to stumps, found that within weeks, new shoots burst from the base. A single season yields armloads of fresh leaf, each regrowth cycle stacking more protein onto the annual tally. This regenerative power is not just theory. Coppiced trunks recover so fast that farmers in Asia and Africa use them as living feed pumps, cutting back 2 or 3 times per year without ever exhausting the rootstock. The underground network tells its own story. Mulberry roots stabilize the soil, locking in moisture and nutrients. Fallen leaves feed earthworms, which in turn aerate the ground and spread fertility. Over time, the patch beneath an old mulberry becomes a sponge, holding water during drought and draining quickly after storms. Where other feed crops demand irrigation, fertilizer, and replanting, the mulberry just keeps coming back. It is an asset that shrugs off neglect, a biological machine that resets itself after every harvest. For the backyard keeper, that means less work, less risk, and a feed source that outlasts the ups and downs of weather and market alike. The payoff is a flock that eats like wild birds, fruit, bugs, and greens in a never-ending cycle. The tree's resilience turns every setback into a comeback, every dry spell into an opportunity. Under the mulberry, abundance is not an accident. It is built into the biology, a partnership between land, tree, and bird that outsmarts the feed store, season after season. In the spring of 1838, a fever swept through the heartland and the hills of New England. Newspaper broadsheets promised fortunes beyond imagination, touting the white mulberry, Morus multicaulis, as the ticket to a new American silk empire. Nurseries ran full-page ads, fortunes from silk. Plant now, harvest gold. Prices for cuttings soared from a few dollars to $30 per 100. In Germantown, Pennsylvania, a single sale of over 260,000 trees brought in more than $80,000, an astronomical sum for the time. Farmers mortgaged land to buy saplings, convinced that the path to prosperity ran through rows of mulberries and the hum of silkworms. But beneath the optimism, the numbers twisted into a trap. The market for trees grew faster than the market for silk. By 1839, the bubble burst. Prices collapsed by 99% in a single season. Trees that fetched $1 in the spring were worthless by fall. The Panic of 1837 had already drained credit from the countryside, and now the silk dream turned sour. Personal diaries from the time capture the shock. One Connecticut farmer wrote, "We hear daily of men who have lost all, their orchards now a curse upon the land." In Mansfield, neighbors tore out their mulberry rows, some burning the stumps in bitter ceremony. The promise of easy wealth left behind a generation of ruined hopes and empty fields. The trauma did not fade. For decades, the mulberry stood as a symbol of folly and failure. Extension agents and rural papers warned against speculation trees. The stain lingered, not just on the land, but in the memory of families who watched their fortunes wither. The silk bubble of 1839 did not just end a craze, it seeded a quiet avoidance, a cultural boycott that would shadow the mulberry for generations. Purple stains on sidewalks, driveways, and car hoods. These became the mulberry's urban calling card. City councils from Albuquerque to Tucson debated the mess every summer, as fruiting mulberries painted the concrete with splashes of red and violet that refused to wash away. Municipal codes began to reflect the frustration. Ordinance books labeled fruiting mulberries a public nuisance, citing not just the stains, but the sticky tracks into homes, the swarm of bees and flies, and the cost of cleanup. In some cities, planting new fruit-bearing mulberries was banned outright. The wording was clinical but decisive. No person shall plant or maintain any fruit-bearing mulberry tree within city limits. Homeowners associations followed suit, writing clauses into neighborhood covenants that threatened fines for anyone harboring a fruiting tree. The complaints were not just about aesthetics. Insurance adjusters tallied up claims for ruined paint jobs and slip and fall injuries. Real estate agents warned that a mature mulberry could knock thousands off a home's value if the berries stained a front walk. The tree that once fed flocks and shaded porches was recast as a liability. Nurseries, sensing the shift, changed their supply. Trade journals in the 1960s and the 1970s charted a new trend, the rise of the fruitless male mulberry. Catalogs began to fill with listings for fruitless white and male shade cultivars, trees guaranteed never to drop a single berry. Propagation techniques, once focused on diversity and yield, now prioritized uniformity and sterility. Cuttings and grafts from selected male trees flooded the market, replacing the old seed-grown mix of sexes. By the late 20th century, male clones dominated urban landscaping, their pollen heavy but their branches clean. The fruiting mulberry, once a fixture of backyard abundance, was quietly pushed out of the city, not by blight or drought, but by a steady drumbeat of regulation and market demand for spotless concrete. The mulberry's fatal flaw is its clock. Once ripe, the fruit gives you less than 48 hours at room temperature before it starts to ferment. Sugars break down, yeast takes over, and what was once sweet turns sour and sticky. Mold follows. In the world of industrial produce, that is not a minor inconvenience. It is a total write-off. Apples and oranges can survive weeks in storage and transit. Even strawberries, fragile as they are, last longer than a mulberry. But mulberries spoil before the paperwork is finished. Storage trials confirm it. Visible spoilage and alcohol formation appear in under 2 days at 20 degrees Celsius. Refrigeration slows the process, but not enough for the demands of national shipping. The only way to stop the clock is immediate processing, drying, freezing, or juicing right at the source. None of these methods fit the low-cost, high-volume model that Big Ag depends on. Mechanization does not help. The softness that makes mulberries appealing to birds and livestock is a disaster for machines. Over the row, berry harvesters crush the fruit before it leaves the branch. Tree shakers, so effective for cherries and nuts, turn a mulberry harvest into a mess of bruised, leaking berries that clog equipment and ruin bins. Engineering studies from the past 2 decades show that up to 85% of mulberries are damaged beyond use by current harvest technology. There is no economical way to get ripe mulberries from tree to truck at scale. For backyard growers, none of this matters. The tree drops fruit straight to the ground, and animals eat it fresh. But for industrial agriculture, the mulberry's abundance is useless if it cannot be boxed, shipped, or stored. The problem is not the tree, it is the system. A mature mulberry tree, left to its own cycle, turns sunlight and rain into something you can measure in pounds, not just promises. Lay out a tarp beneath the branches, grip the trunk, and shake hard. The result is instant, a downpour of berries, purple and red, drumming against plastic. In half a minute, what started as a scattering becomes a mound. The sticky haul fills buckets, sometimes before the sun is fully up. The scale does not lie. A healthy tree, 5 years old or more, yields between 200 and 400 pounds of fruit each season. That is not an estimate. It is the sum of every bucket, weighed and recorded. For a flock of 12 birds, that single tree can stand in for about 30% of their yearly feed. The only cost is the effort of shaking and gathering, no bags or shipping, just fruit falling for free. Commercial feed costs 30 to 40 cents a pound. Over a season, the mulberry harvest replaces hundreds of dollars in grain. Each berry is a small savings, a direct cut from the feed bill. The labor is simple, a few tarp shakes each week, fitting easily between other chores. The tree drops fruit when it is ready, and the flock takes care of cleanup, turning berries into eggs and leaving behind richer soil. This is practical math, not theory. The numbers add up, season after season, as long as the tree stands. For anyone with a patch of ground and birds to feed, the mulberry is more than a symbol. It is a living asset, paying out every summer. The proof sits in the pile, on the scale, and in the eggs that follow. Winter strips the branches bare, but the mulberry's value does not freeze with the first hard frost. The winter bank is where the tree's real magic shows. Those protein-rich leaves, stripped and dried before the cold sets in, become a stash of feed that waits in the shed for months on end. No spoilage, no mold, just crisp green flakes ready to be crumbled into the ration. The secret is moisture. Get the leaves down to under 10% water, and the risk of rot vanishes. A simple solar dryer does the trick. It is a frame of mesh or screen, angled to catch the sun, with a tarp to keep off dew. In 2 or 3 days of dry weather, the leaves snap like paper. Packed into feed sacks or bins, they will last until spring grass returns. For the keeper who wants true resilience, the mulberry's reach goes beyond chickens. Enter the pig loop. When the last berries have dropped, pigs move in as living tractors, rooting through fallen fruit and cleaning up what the birds leave behind. Their snouts break up the soil, mixing in mulberry leaf litter and manure, and setting the stage for next year's growth. Rotational grazing schedules keep animals moving, always a step ahead of overgrazing and compaction. Some keepers run sheep or goats through the same loop, letting each species play its part in the cycle. The tree feeds the flock feeds the soil, and the system resets itself with every season. The dried leaves become more than winter insurance, they are a currency of independence. For every pound stored, that is 1 less pound of corn or soy to buy, 1 more layer of protection against price shocks or supply chain breaks. The mulberry's value multiplies when animals and seasons are woven together, making a single tree the backbone of a year-round, multi-species toolkit. In a world built on fragile supply lines and one-size-fits-all solutions, this is the kind of resilience that cannot be bought, only banked, leaf by leaf, season by season. The final verdict, defying the system, comes down to a single act: planting a tree, not as a symbol, but as a direct challenge to the logic of the feed mill and the ledger. For every backyard keeper who has watched the price of bagged feed climb, the solution is not locked in a patent or a supply chain. It is rooted in civic science, a living experiment that anyone can join. The roadmap is simple. Plant 1 fruiting mulberry, measure what it gives, and share the results. No need for acreage or advanced degrees. 1 tree, 1 flock, 1 season. Track the drop. How many pounds of fruit and leaves? How many eggs? How much feed is left in the bag? Compare the numbers. Share them in forums with neighbors, with the next keeper who is tired of waiting for the price to come down. This is not theory. It is a call to action that rewrites the rules from the ground up. When enough small keepers measure and report, the data stacks up, not as a corporate white paper, but as a grassroots archive of abundance. That is civic science in its purest form. Ordinary people doing the work that institutions forgot. The one-tree experiment is not just a challenge to the old story of dependence. It is a blueprint for resilience, written in real time, by real hands. There is no permission slip required. No company stands to profit when a tree feeds a flock for free. The power is in the planting, the measuring, the sharing. The next chapter belongs to those who refuse to wait for permission, who plant, forget, and let the results speak for themselves. Today, as the bagged feed vulnerability drives up costs and supply chains falter, a single mulberry tree, nature's self-filling feeder, still outperforms a pallet of pellets. With leaves boasting up to 22% protein, a 90-day fruit drop, and antioxidant-rich yolks, it delivers what big ag can't. Resilience. You can plant once and forget. The real boycott was not against failure, it was against independence. Sometimes the simplest abundance is the most subversive. What would you plant if no one could profit from it?